No? Testing, testing. And I'm gonna call. Hi, Denise. We haven't started yet, and honestly, there's only 2 commissioners at the dais at this point, but I wanted to get you on the phone. Oh, 3. One is half there, half in between. But I wanted to get you on the phone just to make sure that you could hear everybody and everything was good. So.
Okay.
So hang in there. I'm going to mute you for just a few minutes.
Okay.
Crystal ball. All right, we are ready whenever you are. I have Denise McGriff, Commissioner McGriff, on the conference line that she can hear us through the microphones, and I have David Mooney on the conference phone in front of us as well.
Very good, Katie. Thank you. I call to order the City of Oregon City Urban Renewal Commission meeting for Wednesday.
Okay, hold on a second.
We are ready whenever you are. I have Denise McGriff, Commissioner McGriff, on the conference line that she can hear us through the
I know what's
microphone.
going on.
And I have David Mooney on the conference phone in front of us.
Delay. Very good, Katie. Thank you.
Hey, David.
Order the City of Oregon City Urban Renewal Commission meeting.
What do you want me to tell him? Mute the TV, mute the computer?
That's a long feedback loop.
Why is it in a loop?
Hey, David, can you mute your phone unless you're speaking on it?
I can barely hear you, Katie.
We may have the phone and a laptop on at the same time.
Thank you.
Needs to mute the sound on the laptop.
Yeah.
We use the phone.
Hey, David, can you mute your phone unless you're speaking on it? I can barely hear you, Katie.
Phone and a laptop on it.
Thank you.
So before we proceed, I'm gonna just do a verbal test.
I'm gonna hang up and then I'm gonna recall them.
Okay, just delay.
Sorry.
That's okay. It's all right. It's happened to me.
I guess he's not late at all.
Oh, 5 minutes.
You're actually early.
Call-ins that haven't muted their
Who's the
phones.
call-in?
Mr. David Mooney is one, and Denise.
I'm not hearing anything.
You can watch it tonight later.
Okay, Denise, are you still there?
I am.
Okay, we had to turn the mics off temporarily. We're back in service now. We can proceed when the chair
Do we need
wishes.
to run an audio test, or we're good?
We're good. We're live right now.
I'm going to call to order the Wednesday, October 2nd, 2019 City of Oregon City Urban Renewal Commission meeting. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Mike Mitchell,
Here.
Commissioner Rocky Smith,
Here.
Commissioner Steve Van Haverby,
Here.
Commissioner Dan Holliday,
Here.
Commissioner Rachel Lyle Smith,
Here.
Commissioner Denise McGriff,
Present.
Chair Frank O'Donnell.
Here. First item on our agenda tonight is item 4A, 19-551. It's amendment number 1 to the disposition and development agreement with the Cove LLC, and that'll be presented by our city manager, Tony Conkle.
Thank you, Chair O'Donnell. Evening, Commissioners. At the September 18th, 2019 Urban Renewal Commission meeting, representatives from the Cove LLC presented an update on the status of the project. The Urban Renewal Commission tentatively approved amendments to the existing disposition and development agreement that included the following. The Commission and the developer wish to extend the timeline of the date to meet the preconditions in Section 3.1, satisfaction or waiver of preconditions of the DDA to May 20th, 2020, and the developer shall return to the Commission no later than February 5th, 2020 to provide an update on the status of meeting the outstanding preconditions in Section 3.2 of the DDA, at which time the Commission may choose to begin termination of the DDA should substantial progress towards meeting the preconditions of Section 3.2 has not been made. And the Commission and the developer agree that the land use submittal fees for the land use application may be reimbursed, provided such payment shall occur no later than 360 days from the effective date of the original DDA, which is November 26, 2018. There should be no additional reimbursement of funds to the developer other than the land use fees as identified in Section 7.2 of the Urban Renewal Investment of the DDA until all of the preconditions identified in Section 3.2 have been met or waived. This proposed amendment number 1 to the disposition and development has incorporated the changes that I've just read to you. So at this time, staff would be happy to answer any questions, and that we are recommending approval of the proposed amendment number 1 to the disposition and development agreement.
Do we have any questions from the commission or discussion among the commission?
Yeah, Dan. It's not on.
Mr. Holliday?
No, I'm just going to make the motion. Move to approve the amendment 1 to the Cove DDA.
Second.
Whoa, okay. Who is the seconder?
It was Mr. Van Haverbeek.
Mr. Van Haverbeek.
Any discussion? No?
I do.
Oh, okay.
I just want to mention to the public my reason for voting against this, which I didn't mention at the last meeting. This project has been going on for more than a decade. I'm the only person sitting up here that was involved in it from the beginning. Multiple times on the commission, this project has come and been changed. Multiple times the DDA has been changed. I think that a lot of the public really doesn't know what is different about this project than when it started. I had concerns about it from the beginning, but more so as it has continued, more so after the DDA was approved after the election, more so after I listened to the executive session tapes, more so after we've continued to change it over and over again. I looked at newspaper articles from 2011 that talked about the project having 9 lives at that point. I read another articles in 2013 that talked about mayors and commissioners concerned about the amount of times this project had changed, the amount of times that it had been delayed and not delayed by the city. In 2014, when I was on the commission, we said, absolutely, this is your last chance to change it. But however, that change, the next change after the last change that we allowed, was done after I was off the commission. And then again, like I said, the DDA was voted on after the election. I just want the public to be aware that if you, have concerns about this project or are unsure about the project, you really need to start asking questions about it. And I think that one of the things that concerned me at our last meeting was even some of the commissioners on this panel were like asking questions about flood issues at the last meeting, which I can't believe we were still asking those questions. at that point. It seems like that's the last thing you do after you already decide that you're going to move forward with a project. Anyway, that's why I'm voting no.
Chair O'Donnell, let me ask a question before we vote.
Please do.
I want to make sure I understand the $70,000 payment. In what you just read, it said that that land use application has to be submitted before November of this year.
Of this year,
Okay.
correct.
Elsewhere, later in some of the documentation you sent out, it said that the Urban Renewal Commission will have already approved that land use application.
Correct.
Okay, so they're not going to get the 70,000 unless that application comes in enough time prior to November, whatever of this year,
November 21st.
for us to review it
Yes.
and then
Submit.
make any changes if necessary and submit it.
Correct. Per the development agreement, the land use application that's for Phase 2A, the detailed development plan. So backing up a step, we already did the concept development plan for the entire site. So now the detailed development plan for Phase 2A is actually the buildings themselves, the parking lots, the exact landscaping, the roughscape. That has to go through land use. That application needs to be approved by the Urban Renewal Commission. And then once it's approved by the Urban Renewal Commission, it can be submitted to go through the land use process.
Okay,
And yes, the
And if that
11, the
doesn't happen-
11/21 date, out of the $695,000, whatever's not spent, that money will not be able to be reimbursed.
if that
after.
doesn't happen before November, okay.
Correct.
All right, thank
And
you.
the 70,000 was a estimate, since we didn't actually have the application yet, but looking through the planning fees, we have a general idea of what it is, and we made some assumptions on valuation that gave us that number.
Okay, thank you.
Under here. Thank you, Mr. Mitchell, for asking that question, and I want to advise you that I asked the same question of Mr. Conkle one-on-one, and that, we would take, if the contract company fails to perform, we take possession of everything, including, data and intelligence information gathered. So, having said that, is there any other comments or questions from this commission? In that case, we call for the vote.
Commissioner Rachel Lau Smith. Aye. Commissioner Mike Mitchell.
Aye.
Commissioner Rocky Smith.
No.
Commissioner Steve Van Haverbeek.
Aye.
Commissioner Dan Holliday.
Aye.
Commissioner Denise McGriff.
Aye.
And Chair Frank O'Donnell.
Aye. Moving on to the next item on our agenda, it's item 4B 19, I'm sorry.
Thank you, David. Appreciate you calling in.
You're welcome. I'm happy to listen to that, and I just make a comment that these good things take time. I was involved for 20 years
Bad
in
things take time
the
too.
redevelopment of Falls Creek in Vancouver, and it took us 20 years to get it right, but we got it right in the end.
Thank you, Mr. Mooney.
Bye for now.
Bye.
Thank you.
Now we'll move on to item 4B 19-549. It's the Urban Renewal Stakeholder Advisory Committee. I want to deviate from the plan as proposed and make some comments, if that would be acceptable to you, Mr. Conkle.
Your commission, sir.
Originally we had this long conversation about how to go about this, and as the plan developed, it got more and more complicated with this commission appointing a subcommittee that then appointed a committee that then brought back suggestions to this committee. And it just seemed that we were approaching this in such a circular way when in fact what we need is certain specific things to happen. And those considerations that we need, and I preface, the reason I'm saying all this is because I'm about to propose a different approach. And I'm going to throw it out for discussion and feedback from this committee. So what we need is, our outcomes don't necessitate forming a committee to work through the issues because it's unnecessary for what we can decide as a commission ourselves. And I say that because I often speak with citizens, among them Bob Mahoney, who says, you are tasked with this, you took this on, you are the decision makers, make the decision. And I don't want to abdicate that authority. I don't want to try to, I mean, if you look at this commission as potentially proposed, this committee, the ultimate committee could have been 17 people. And I think it's hard enough to get 5 to 7 people to reach a consensus, much less 17. And I certainly don't want to try to educate those who have no background in urban renewal. And even with our limited background, we're going to bring on someone to educate us further. The second point is we actually have a very good plan as outlined by Mr. Conkle. And regardless of the size of the committee, this commission can follow that plan and arrive where we need to arrive. And the third component of that is, and voiced by my fellow commissioner, Rachel Lyle-Smith, the public outreach is important and to all of us. And we can engage the public in any number of ways. And some of that is in work sessions or roundtable discussions where the very people that would have potentially been members of this, what I view as an unworkable committee because of its size, can come in here and give testimony as to what we need to know and give their viewpoints. And then this committee, this commission, which will be educated by a person we're going to bring in, can make those decisions. Now, having made those decisions with the input of our community up front through work session or roundtable discussion, I look for us to forge a plan. And then when that plan is forged, we go back out to have that vetted by the same people again and give their feedback as to what our product is, if we turned out the product that we need. And I changed my mind, and I'll take full responsibility for that, just because time is of the essence, and outcome is of the essence. Education of a large number of people is difficult, and managing a large committee is difficult. So I would ask that we consider an alternative to the plan as proposed, which is why I've usurped Tony's time, because I don't want him explaining something that I, after much thought, have come to disagree with my own original idea. And I put that out, the plan as I just put it out now for discussion. And I'll ask Mr. Parn, is there anything that you need to fill in at this time? Have I missed any elements that?
Thank you, Chair O'Donnell and Commission. No, I think that's excellent. And what I'm hearing is this body is, from what I've heard, has a really good representation of the public on it in terms of viewpoints on the Urban Renewal Agency. And so what I've heard from you is that this commission could then go through that informational process that would help to inform the decisions that you can make. And I'm sure we'll all learn a lot through that process. Information such as if the Urban Renewal Commission dissolves the district, what happens to the assets and obligations? How does all of that work? That would be very informative. And then once you have that information, and as you said, engaged with a lot of the stakeholders that have strong opinions on that. And then, of course, reaching out to the public via polls or using our information officer or advisory votes is all up to the commission to decide down the road. It sure sounds like a good plan and an efficient one, following kind of the steps the city manager outlined.
The steps are excellent regardless of the size of the committee that utilizes them. So having said that, not to repeat myself, I'll throw out my alternate plan for discussion if anybody wants to endorse it.
Chair, I'd like to speak.
Okay, the chair recognizes Commissioner. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Yes, please do.
I don't have any objection to the revised plan. However, what I do have a concern about is, and maybe you didn't mean to use this word as testimony, I think we need to have a conversation with our community, and that doesn't involve sitting around on the dais and taking testimony. I would like to have an actual roundtable conversation with people where it's facilitated, where we can actually talk without it being a formal testimony. Like you said, have a roundtable conversation, invite people in. I don't have any objection to that. I'll deal with the committee, whatever size it is. The one thing that I did suggest, and I sent this to the city manager yesterday, was that I would really like to see if we could get an RFQ going, or an RFP, whatever you think would be appropriate, to get a consultant on board as soon as we possibly can before we start meeting about the topic, because I think, although the process I like the way you've outlined it based on our discussions and our discussion with the commission, I would like to have some feedback from an expert on did we cover everything? Do we have all the topics? Where we should go with this, and then proceed.
I believe that consultant is covered under Tony. I believe he listed as Urban Renewal 101, which is probably the first step in our group meeting. So to educate, do you care to comment on that further? Have I summarized that correctly?
Yeah, I think just getting an understanding of what the commission would like to do, we can certainly write that into a contract to accomplish. When I think about, what this was directed to was trying to educate a larger stakeholder group. We would just transfer that to the conversation that and the educational components and those discussions happening at the commission. Hearing, Commissioner McGriff's comments when you're talking about a roundtable, it kind of reminds me a little bit of the community conversations that we did around Willamette Falls Legacy Project. Just realizing that it takes staff time and money and just public engagement just takes a little bit longer in that process. So we can certainly tailor this to what the commission feels is necessary to get the information and the input that you want.
And everybody up here understands the importance of public input, so we'll do it one way or the other. I'm going to recognize Mr. Mike Mitchell for his comments.
I guess I'm just going to agree with what Commissioner McGriff said. I think that the public input part of this, I agree with you, Commissioner Chair O'Donnell, that this body is the right group to handle this process. I agree with that. But somebody testifying, sitting there 3 minutes without an opportunity for back and forth is not the public involvement that I want to see on this. So, we can all put our heads together with Mr. Conkle's help and come up with a meaningful public process that allows for some back and forth. But I agree with you that this is the body to do it.
I totally agree with that conversation. Just a conversation, not a limitation where you got to present your stuff in 3 minutes and then you're done. The idea is an interactive conversation, so I agree with that. And I'll leave my comments at that and move on to Commissioner Rachel Lyle Smith for her comments or questions.
Thank you, Chair O'Donnell. First, Tony, thank you for revising this plan. It definitely shows that you listened to our last meeting and what we were saying, and I appreciate the effort that went into this, knowing that we're changing it at the very next meeting. So
hopefully we can salvage something from it.
You did a great job coming up with this revised version, because I think it is very reflective of what we said, and so I appreciate that. I'm not sure who did this or who the staff folks are that are working on this, so I would be interested in knowing who is our staff urban renewal team support, since we're without an economic development manager. Is it you?
It's me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Kristen Brown has helped. She's done a lot of the legwork with the consultant, and Wyatt has helped. Ms. Parno has helped as well.
Okay. And then to move on to the new proposal, I agree with the chair's recommended change, especially since I campaigned on this issue, and so did Commissioner Rocky Smith, and so did Mr. Mike Mitchell. So I think we are all in agreement that this was an important thing that we wanted to be active on. And when I was thinking about this advisory committee, I thought, well, because I want to be an active participant, I'm going to have to go to every single meeting or listen to it anyway. So I'm in order to participate as I would like to participate, because I think it's important that I'm involved and would want to be involved for the decision making. So I think this is a great idea. Bringing in a consultant or mediator to help, I think, would be really, really great. Yeah, I would just agree with the other comments that have been made about the public input. The only other request I would have is that if we do a survey, again, you took the comments we made of doing a before and after survey to see if our public outreach made a difference in the community, because that was kind of the only thing I could come up with of trying to see if our community outreach worked, or if we could get some feedback. My only request is that if that is still in the next round of one of the options for public outreach and for measuring that public outreach. I'd like to review the survey before it goes out to the public, if you do not mind.
So noted. Chair recognizes Mayor Dan Holliday.
So I see this as two pieces. You have the education piece, which I think can be done by some urban renewal expert, preferably not our legal team from Janet. And then the second piece I see as the public engagement, that whole process. And I would recommend that we contract with Oregon Consensus. They're the group out of Portland State that works directly with the governor's office and mediates disputes all over the state. And I've been currently in two processes with them, both on the Oregon, the Willamette Falls Locks Commission and with the wastewater treatment thing. They do a great job of, mediating, letting people talk, understanding where the process is at the time. So I see it as those two things, the education piece at the beginning, and then, doing that public engagement. I think Oregon Consensus is a great spot to use that.
Well said, and I think we would all be in agreement with that. Does others feel differently?
I think if I could just real quick, when
Yes,
when we were thinking about this, essentially what we were looking at was we need somebody with the expertise in urban renewal.
Right.
To help with the education, and then what we were also looking at was a public participation consultant to help with the outreach and the messaging and the surveying. And so we can go back and kind of look if Oregon Consensus kind of fits in that. Because I think if, let's say we do community conversations with a facilitator to help with the conversation, I think and I'm just winging it right now just because this was just brought up, but you need the expertise in the room to help with the conversation. And so it'll be a discussion if Oregon Consensus has the expertise to speak to urban renewal, or I'm having both consultants there.
Sure.
Right? Because I think it'd be beneficial for whoever's going to help us, whether it's to close down the district or to change the district, to be a part of those conversations so that it can get incorporated into whatever we're going to end up writing at the back end. So I appreciate it. We can look into it. Just got to kind of think about, is it a value add at the end of the day, or can the facilitator with either of those groups who I've already hired do that work as well?
I think I can safely say that this commission sets direction, and the mechanics of it and how best to achieve it, we defer to you as city manager.
Okay, thank you.
And I would just say that, Oregon Consensus has managed, some rather extremely difficult processes, including, the whole Klamath Water Basin issue and some others. So, I would just encourage you to add those people in your thought process.
Certainly. We used them on Willamette Falls early on as well.
Okay.
So before we adjourn, I just want to make it clear, do we have consensus to proceed as we've described tonight? Is there anyone that objects to proceeding in that manner? No.
Chair O'Donnell, I have a quick question.
Please go ahead, Commissioner.
My minor concern, I have no problem with the way that the discussion's going, because obviously I'm very supportive of it. But I want to be really clear to the public is that we not make any assumptions about what the outcome is going to be. We talked about this at the last meeting, and I think we just have to see where the process goes and let it stand at that.
I totally agree with that, and I believe this commission totally agrees with that. There are no specific outcomes that we're targeting. We're going to listen to what the public has to say, and we're going to do our research and present facts and get our input from the public. So thank you, Commissioner.
Yeah. Do you want a motion on proceeding with the new direction, or we don't need that?
Oh, I'm told we don't need that. We have a consensus to proceed. So with that, I believe we've taken care of the business in front of this commission this evening.
Could I just clarify a couple things real quick?
Please do.
Okay. In the draft that I had prepared, and I guess what I need a little bit of direction on is that, generally speaking, how we're going to work through having these discussions, there seems to be agreement on that, generally speaking, these are the steps we want to take to get from the beginning to the end, as outlined here. Realizing once we bring the consultant in, this is probably going to change a little bit in terms of the scope of work and whatever information that they have to have. So generally speaking, this is how we want to get there. So is the direction tonight do you need something brought back to you right now, or is the direction to start trying to find a consultant? Or do you want me to bring this back for further discussion?
I think you go out and find a consultant.
I think you find a consultant because the first step was to educate us on the intricacies of urban renewal.
Okay.
In fact, there may be two.
That's
The education piece and then the other piece.
right. Okay. I just want to make sure we're all comfortable enough to start moving forward, realizing the scope may change as we get into this, but right now we're ready to go.
Yes, we are.
Okay.
So, Commissioner O'Donnell, one last thing. So I'm assuming I'm continuing to work with the city manager on this particular project.
Well, I don't know, are you saying you work separately from the rest of the group?
I've been, as you know, I agreed to work with the city manager on this through this project, and what I'm actually talking about is continuing to work with him as we work through the RFP or RFQ or whatever we have, and just continue to cycle back with him on this since we kind of started this.
I think we leave it to staff at this point.
I don't know, I don't think it would be a good idea for any one of us to work individually with the manager. I think staff works and brings it before the entire commission and we proceed as a group. Do you have any thoughts on that, Mr. Conkle?
I think, we run contracts, we do scopes of work. Really this is up to the commission.
Well,
I'm just saying that I would like to review the draft scope. Just because, again, I've been very involved with this and I'm very committed to seeing this process through.
I don't see any problem.
And if anybody else wants to look at it, we can all look at it.
I don't see any problem with any member of this commission looking at it, but we'll act on it as a group.
Right. Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
All right. Do we have any further business this evening? Hearing none, this meeting's adjourned.